All right, my friends. We just pressed the Let's Go Live button over here. It's an amazing Tuesday, and we have got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the interwebs. Before we go ahead and get started, got to make sure those tubes are connected on the YouTubes, the Rumble, the locals, and everywhere else all across America and the world. And it looks like things have connected themselves. That's tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about the Lawfare plot being busted in New York. We got Alvin Bragg. We know him as the prosecutor who brought 34 felonious counts of false business records against the president. And the news today is that Congress, the Oversight Committee, the Judiciary Committee, they have made a very interesting connection between this fella and this fella. First, we have Matthew Colangelo, the former Biden DOJ number 3 official who was not the deputy AG, but the associate AG. And he used to work for Joe Biden. Before that, he used to work for Tish James. Before that, he used to work for Barack Obama. And what's been so interesting about this man's career is that everywhere he goes, seemingly, he ends up prosecuting Donald Trump in some way, shape, or form. If it's not in a criminal case, then it's certainly in a civil case, using the New York Attorney General's office, the power of the government, to attack his political opponents. Well, the story is that Matthew Colangelo, when he was applying for the job, when he left the biggest Department of Justice in the whole world, one of the most prestigious positions of any prosecutor's career, he went over to work for Bragg. And what happened is, when he was applying for the job, he submitted a resume, and in the resume, he referenced Jeff Zients. Now, at the time, Jeff Zients was not the chief of staff for Joe Biden, but he ended up becoming the chief of staff for Joe Biden. And so how the deep, incestuous, disgusting gutter of DC works, we'll continue to observe. But Colangelo and Zients, they were very close. So close that Colangelo said, give him a call. He'll give you a good reference. He'll tell you how good I am. Bragg hires the dude. Zients goes in, is now running Joe Biden's entire White House because Joe Biden has dementia or Parkinson's or whatever they're hiding from us. And now we know that these two were in cahoots, obviously, as part of a conspiracy to weaponize the government against their political opponents. Hopefully they get prosecuted in time. Now, we also have Alvin Bragg. The DOJ and others are behind a lot of this, but Bragg, of course, ran for office as the as the Manhattan prosecutor with a promise that he would be prosecuting Trump. And so the Judiciary Committee, not the DOJ, they came out and they said and assembled this nice little video clip showing all the times that old Bragg had brought this up during his last campaign. And that is all the pretext to this massive report that they dropped. And it's a big one. We're going to go through it. We're going to hit the highlights on the whole thing, but they are detailing all of the lawfare that went on. This is a congressional report from the Oversight and Judiciary Committees, weaponization committees, that are reporting that the entire Mercan prosecution, that entire kangaroo court saga that we covered here in depth was rigged, obviously. We talked about a lot of it. Now the report puts it down on paper. And the question is, we were going to have Bragg and Colangelo, Biden's prosecutor, come in and testify very soon. In fact, they were supposed to be testifying this week. Turns out that has been postponed. And I think someone asked yesterday or the day before about whether they'll testify or not. And I think I said, yeah, I think they'll testify. They got subpoenas. They agreed to testify. And then turns out, what? No, they moved it. So it was on 7/12. And so I'll eat my shorts on that one. But they kicked that one down the road again, or maybe we don't have a new hearing date. We'll see if Congress is going to reschedule this. I don't know what James Comer's doing, but we'll come back on that. Now, there was a hearing today, And this fellow was testifying, some other law professors and some other smart people saying, yeah, the whole case was obviously just a total charade. So we'll go through all of that in the first segment. But man, this prosecutor, the connections to the Biden White House, if they already weren't deep and thick enough, they are surely more so today. And so all that's coming up. Then we got to talk about some election rigging. A lot of it is continuing to happen. We know that in other locations, they've made many attempts to already interfere in 2024. First in Colorado by throwing him off the ballot, then Maine, they threw him off the ballot there, and then they tried to spiral that off into other states because they're cowards and cheaters. But after that, then they tried to say that there was initial presumption of validity for all signatures in certain locations like Michigan. And so the list goes on and on. But one thing that we have a concern about are all of the illegals who have come in, and they're all being handed out different registration cards and different citizenship cards, or not citizenship, but residency cards. And they all have different permission and different status, and they're all on this code and this code over here. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. And the point is, they're just registering people for all sorts of different things. And the question is that going to be sufficient for them to go in, use that as some form of government ID, say that they deserve a ballot, get a ballot, and then submit that somewhere? Now, I know, and I've been watching this debate all over X, but there are some people who point to like one provision and they say, oh, no, clearly that's not totally illegal because the law says this right here. And you say, okay, moron, that's like one state for one little contingent of permutations of possibilities about how somebody might get a ballot. So they, oh, no, it's not possible. We never put that on there. It's illegal. All right, give me a break. So you're telling me that there is nobody illegal in the United States of America who is going to be voting in 2024. Would you be willing to put your house on that line? I doubt it. So we're going to go through this. Now, Trump came out and he endorsed this SAVE Act because it makes total sense that if you have a country, you should probably have the citizens of that country be the people who decide who governs that country. I don't know. Sounds like a smart idea. But many people, mostly Democrats and people on the left, don't want that to happen. And so Congress has now considered, at least in the House, this SAVE Act. We'll read through the one sheet. We'll see what's inside the bill. It was sponsored by Chip Roy. He explains why it's very important to have a functional country. Trump is out endorsing this in full swing. Biden promising to veto it. And Johnson was talking about this morning. And he said something like, he thinks there's about 16 million illegals. And so let's just say 1% of them, let's say maybe, like 5% of them get registered to vote. Or 1% of them, right? If you go all the way down, pick a small number. If 1% got ballots and they happen to turn that in favor of the Democrats, that's a pretty big swing, especially when we're talking about margins of error in certain states in 2020, like 11,000 votes in Arizona, 10,000 votes, 11,000 in Georgia and Wisconsin and these other places. So it's very, very close. Small permutations, small shifts in the demographics might have big consequences, which is why they're doing it. And so we'll talk all about that. And Biden is going to veto it because they want it to continue. Chip Roy will explain. And then we're going to talk about the 25th Amendment today. Oh, yes. We got into it a little bit yesterday. There was a great super chat that came in from one of our friends and asked us about the 25th Amendment. And lo and behold, we wake up and boom, everyone's talking about it. Because we got into it here first, obviously. So Mike Johnson was talking about it this morning. Somebody said, hey, I'm watching The Watchers yesterday. They were talking about the 25th Amendment. He's like, oh, yeah, I love that show. Let me answer questions about it. Anyway, so they were talking about it. 25th Amendment. Just kidding about that first part. All right, so one day. But Mike Johnson says 25th Amendment is appropriate. We're going to read through it and refresh our recollection about where this amendment came from. And it seems like it might be appropriate if our president doesn't have a brain by his own admission. It's just his problem. Pelosi, remember, she brought this up last time, and she was explaining that they're going to form a new commission, and then they're just going to remove Trump. Remember, they tried that. So she says that this is something that they can do. I disagree. And then we also have Mike Johnson, who says this is dangerous times, and removing an incompetent president is good for America. Hawley also got asked about this and said, yeah, maybe it is appropriate. And Tim Burchett was also asked about this when he was roaming the halls of Congress. Then Karine came out for another pretty rough press conference. I don't know if the press is going to continue to indulge in these things, but she just comes out and basically lies to them. And the stories keep changing. She has no idea what the hell's going on. It's in total disarray. They keep telling us that like adults are back in charge and it's a return to normalcy, and they don't know what's going on. It's great. She came out yesterday, remember, I can't talk about the doctors. I can't talk about anything. And then as soon as the press briefing was over, the doctor released a letter answering a bunch of the questions. And so we go, what? I thought you just said you like cannot answer those because of like national security, privacy and HIPAA and all this stuff. Hey, wait, what? Then the doctor came out and like released everything. So like, well, did you lie to us? I thought you said that you couldn't release that stuff and then you guys released it. So what the hell's going on? So anyways, she responded to that. And the question, of course, is whether Joe Biden has beaten this little insurrection. All of the Disney princesses and the Democrat super donors were throwing a hissy fit like they always do. They're hysterical. It doesn't matter what it is, COVID, anything. They just lose it like lunatics. But they were doing the same thing, like, Joe Biden, no, go, melting down, the world's ending, Joe can't talk. Like idiots. We already knew this for 3.5 years, but they still lost it. So now, because they're good little lemmings and good little sheep, they just go right back into the flock. Joe Biden comes out, he gives them a scolding, like, okay, AOC's like, sorry, okay, we'll get back in line. And so they all go back, and the question to Karine is, have you beaten this coup attempt from the Democrats trying to eject Joe Biden from the White House? She'll answer that one. And then the real big question is, who is actually running the country? Don't really know. Might be Hunter Biden, might be Dr. Jill, might be Jeff Zients, might be the CIA. Who knows? So Peter Doocy asked about that. And so we'll have some clips from Karine all coming up in that third segment. And so we got 3 good segments to get to today, and we're glad that you're here and joining us this morning. We do members-only streams here during the week, and if you would have been with us this morning, you would have joined us as we unpacked all of these issues. Republicans had a full House briefing this morning. Elise Stefanik, Mike Johnson was out, so if you missed it, you're a member. This is what we hit this morning. They talked about why Joe's unfit, and basically he's got to go. We also talked about whether, we went through a whole series of Democrats who all just reversed, like their necks must be sore because they reversed course so bad. Like they were running full speed, like, get rid of Joe. They're all running. Let's go. Get rid of him. And then all of a sudden they woke up like, they got jerked back the other way. And now they're all like, we forgot. Joe's amazing. I forgot how awesome he is. He's really great. So we went through a bunch of those clips, including Jamie Raskin. Man, it was painful. This morning he was just like, no, I love Joe. You could see it. It was like just pure agony on his face. It was great to watch. A lot of fun. And lying Jake Tapper had an absolute meltdown because I think he realizes, you know how people overreact when they get caught? You're like, you ask somebody about that thing and they're like, no, I wasn't doing that. You're like, well, I was just asking like if that, no, I had nothing to do with it. Well, like, I wasn't even asking about it. I was just like, could you pass me the salt? They're like, no, Okay, so there's poison in there. Thanks for letting me know. So it's kind of like that. Tapper just melted down. We talked about all that, went through a ton of that this morning. It was a lot of fun. And so if you want to join us over there, you can do that at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where you can join us. If my mind map would be working, then that would be a lot of fun. Now, we've got, as I said, 3 awesome segments to get to today, starting with Alvin Bragg. But before we jump into any of that, I want to make sure we've seen this news story. This came over from this website called statnews.com. It's a medical and health website. And they're telling us about this bird flu stuff. You've heard it, H5N1. And look at this. It's adapting, which is not good for us. And there's a new study that came out from this Nature magazine. They're telling us this new work published in Nature show that the bovine H5N1 virus could bind to both receptors, including receptors in humans. And so this is not good. And we're always watching all of this with a fine eye, especially as we get closer to the election. But here's the story. We remember what happened last time. There were all these different studies flying around from all the periodicals that the scholars all read. And so we're paying close attention to it, regardless of what happens out there. The idea is we want to be prepared. We want to make sure that we've got our own prescription contagion emergency kits from our friends at the Wellness Company. It's the only kit of its kind. I've got mine right here, baby. And when you open it up, you're going to find there is a selected assortment of effective different medications inside for all sorts of stuff. Bird flu, COVID, respiratory illnesses. It's got hydroxychloroquine, Tamiflu, budesonide, nebulizers, all sorts of good stuff in there because you're not going to know what you're going to need. And you have it It's got an emergency guidebook in there as well to help you understand how to use it. You know, people like Dr. Peter McCullough have backed this stuff, and every American should have at least one of these kits in their home. Yours is easy to order. Couldn't be easier. Go to twc.health/Robert. Links are down in the description below. Use code Robert when you check out. You're going to save money and get free shipping when you use our code. It's less than the cost of a single doctor's visit. Super easy. twc.health/Robert. Use code Robert at checkout. And these kits are only available in the United States. So get yours today, my friends. And be prepared for whatever it is that's coming. All right. And so, without any further ado, let's get into it on the day, because we've got some news to attend to. Starting with Bragg. Biden's prosecutor, Matthew Colangelo, was a little bit closer to Joe Biden than they let on. We know that he left Joe Biden as the DOJ's number 3, went to work for Bragg to prosecute Trump. But it turns out Colangelo was very closely connected with Jeffrey Zients, the guy who is now the chief of staff for Joe Biden. So Joe Biden's DOJ knew Joe Biden's chief of staff was sent over to Bragg's office to prosecute Trump, and Colangelo is going after Biden's opponent. Jeffrey Zients, of course, would be very happy if Trump was taken out. And how do we know all of this? Well, it turns out the Judiciary Committee got their hands on some documents, and here is what it looks like. Jim Jordan posted this. He says, we got this new document from the Judiciary GOP. They're investigating all of this collusion between all of the weaponizers. Says when Matthew Colangelo applied to work for Leticia James, remember her? Guess who he listed as his references? So he went to go work. Remember, this guy started working for Obama. Then he went and worked for Leticia, prosecuted Trump in the civil division that led to a lot of Trump's business problems there. He owes about $500 million. That's not good. Led all of that. Then left Tish's office, went to go work for Joe Biden. Many people speculate that he helped to instigate the various prosecutions that were launched in D.C. and launched in Florida. And then left there from the DOJ's number 3, and then went over to Bragg's office to prosecute Trump there, the only cases that has ultimately gone to trial. So before he landed at Bragg's office, here's what he told Tish. He knew the DNC chair, Tom Perez, says, oh, great. So another Democrat will tell you that I'm incredible. The DNC chair was a pretty big endorsement. And now it's Biden's White House chief of staff, Jeff Zients. So here is the list of professional references. This is from Matthew Colangelo. He's applying, filling out his form and his paperwork. It's just a formality at this point. We all know what he's there for. For Executive Deputy Attorney General, the Division of Social Justice. And Leticia was enabling him to go after Trump. So who does he reference? These are his professional references. Just call these people. They'll vouch for me. 1, Tom Perez, Chairman, DNC, former Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. Yeah, that's how it works. So they just go to these Democratic-run institutions, and then when they leave there, they go from Democrat bureaucracy to another Democrat bureaucracy, and they're just basically built to preserve each other. The DOJ preserves the DNC preserves the DOJ. Make sure that everybody who leaves the DOJ has a nice fat landing spot at the DNC and vice versa. So then Colangelo is just a hitman. He's just a prosecutorial hitman for these two guys. And he lives there. So similarly, Colangelo says, Tom was my direct supervisor for 6 years. I was Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights and counsel to the acting associate AG at the U.S. Department of Justice from 2010 to 2013. Those were the Obama years. And chief of staff at the U.S. Department of Labor from 2013 to 2016. Okay, so he's in the government that entire time, one bureaucracy to another. Then he also references Jeffrey Zients, now Biden's White House chief of staff. Now, he wasn't there at the time when he was being referenced here, but he says that I'm referencing him. He's the president of the Cranemere Group, former director, White House National Economic Council, and assistant to the president for economic policy for a bunch of years. Jeff was my direct supervisor for a year. in my role as Deputy Director of the National Economic Council and Deputy Assistant to the President for Economic Policy. Very interesting. So the disgusting, incestuous relationship continues on. Jeff Zients endorsed him to go to Tish's office, then brought him back probably, right? He's been hanging around with Joe Biden for years. And it's just a nice little thing. Now, you'll notice that as part of these hiring documents, the Judiciary Committee also dropped this. Very interesting here. Here's a new document that was obtained by the Judiciary Committee. It says that Leticia James's office was thrilled when Matthew Colangelo was hired by Alvin Bragg. Huh. So we follow the bouncing ball from Obama to Tish to Biden to Bragg. Somebody sends an email. Matthew Colangelo gets a new nameplate at Bragg's office. Weird. Here's what the email says. To James Sheehan from Matthew Colangelo. Oh. Sent Friday, December 16, 2022, 9:53 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. Here's the subject. And a couple emails went back and forth. And it says, from Jim to Matthew, congratulations on your new role. One prosecutor to another. Here's the link. It says, Matthew, glad to see you are back in New York City. Sounds like you and Mr. Trump's paths will continue to intersect. Isn't that interesting? Will continue to intersect. What a strange coincidence. Now, I wanted to reach out to you for contact about your old office about the attached Lisa Monaco memo for regarding a review of the department's approach to instances of misconduct by Federal Bureau of Prisons employees in the report. My Google search shows that the report was posted, but then it was taken down. We're looking at best practices to deal with misconduct from our own prison officials, handling abuse, by the Catholic Diocese in New York too. Enjoy your new role. Enjoy your new role. Oh, he will. Yeah, this is his entire reason for existing, is to prosecute Trump. That's why he's there. So it's very strange that their paths will continue to intersect, right? Everybody knows what this job is. Everybody knows what he's doing. And so he responds, Colangelo says, hey, good to hear from you, Jim. For questions about the Bureau of Prisons, maybe call Betsy. If she's not the right person, she should help you out. Hope you're well, Matthew. So James Sheehan welcoming him and saying, you've done a great job. We can't wait to have you back. We know you're going to enjoy this. See you in court. Colangelo comes back to finish the job. So the connection is there. We always know that this stuff is political. Here is the latest ad or the video that assembles the ads from Alvin Bragg's campaign is now being shared by the Judiciary Committee. So they went through, they assembled all the statements of him, and they created this montage. Here's what it sounds like.
Whoever has this job, are they going to convict Donald Trump?
Look, that is the number one issue. I'm the candidate in the race who has the experience with Donald Trump. We sued the Trump administration over 100 times. I sued Trump over 100 times and brought a case against the Trump Foundation and held him accountable. Holding Trump accountable for the Trump Foundation.
From exposing illegal behavior by the Trump Foundation.
I do have a lot of experience with the former president. I led the New York State Attorney General's work and investigation and successful litigation against him and his family for their misconduct with the Trump Foundation. And also we had a number of litigations, more than 100 involving the Trump administration. I led the team that held Trump and his children accountable for their misconduct with the Trump Foundation. I oversaw the work which sued his administration more than 100 times. I led the Attorney General's work on the Trump Foundation case where we held Trump and his family accountable. When I was at the Attorney General's office, I led our work on the Trump Foundation matter. I also led the team that did the Trump Foundation case, and I've seen him up front and seen the lawlessness that he can do. Started out as a civil rights lawyer, then became a federal prosecutor, ultimately was the #2 lawyer in the New York State Attorney General's office, leading the charge against the racist policies of the Trump administration.
Okay.
I believe we have to hold him accountable. I've litigated with him, and so I'm prepared to go where the facts take me once I see them, and hold him accountable. Being a rich old white man has allowed you to evade accountability in Manhattan. That includes Trump and his children, right? We held him accountable in the Trump Foundation case. My office did the Trump University case. So I've seen a pattern of lawlessness over 20 years. And so I'm inclined to believe all I see in the public domain, and know that there's, and believe that there's a path forward there to make a case.
Prosecuting in the interest of justice. That's Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan prosecutor, Manhattan DA, who's run and campaigned on prosecuting Trump and delivered, actually did what he said he was going to do. New York seemingly is not having a good time with their crime problem, but at least they got their political opponent under their scrutiny. Now, the Judiciary Committee and Congress have released this report, and it's a doozy. There's a lot to unpack here. And so let's see what is inside. From the Committee on the Judiciary and the Select Subcommittee on Weaponization of the Federal Government from the U.S. House of Representatives, you see this nice report, a 35-pager dropped entitled Lawfare, How the Manhattan DA's Office Bragg, Colangelo at the behest of the Bidens, and a New York State judge called Juan Merchan violated the constitutional and legal rights of President Trump. Let's see what's inside. Here's the executive summary. And we covered this case at length and have an entire playlist dedicated to it. So if you missed any of it, be sure to check that out. But here's the summary. It says, on April 4th, 2023, Alvin Bragg, so over a year ago, announced that he secured a 34-count indictment against Trump. Now, it was an insane case. It was a bootstrapped misdemeanor state charge that allegedly said that Trump falsified some business records. We know that this was involving Cohen and Stormy Daniels. One scholar explained that even if these alleged bookkeeping irregularities amounted to crimes, they couldn't have had the slightest impact in 2016, and they were trying to make this an election interference case. So in March of 2023, the Judiciary Committee opened up an investigation. They wanted to know more about this. They dug into this guy, former Manhattan Special Assistant DA Mark Pomerantz. This was the guy who resigned and threw his own hissy fit because Bragg won the election and decided he wasn't going to prosecute. They sent a subpoena to him, litigated about this, and despite his conduct at the deposition, he didn't answer any questions, right? Pomerantz came in, they dragged his butt into Congress, and then he just sat there. I invoked the fifth. I invoked the fifth. Really? You're a prosecutor, Mark. But regardless of his stonewalling, the investigation did prove fruitful. On April 25th, the committee released its findings, and in short, Bragg's prosecution of Trump was politically motivated, obviously. It was unethical, and it was likely unlawfully focused on one person. Anyone would think it was widely perceived as being politically motivated. So we fast forward now this year, May 15, 2024. The Judiciary Committee held a hearing highlighting the weaponization of all of this. During testimony, former federal prosecutor called James Trusty, said this is the antithesis of justice. This is an ends justify the means mentality. And Robert Costello, Michael Cohen's former attorney, also came out and explained what a rigged prosecution this whole thing was. Costello, as we know, came in and said, I couldn't even talk about anything. The judge cut me off. Costello was looking up at the judge like this. What? And the judge said, what are you doing looking at me like that? And he said, wow, this is crazy. On June 13th, the full committee on the judiciary convened a hearing. And the committee heard testimony about how badly this case was. The FEC Commissioner, James Traynor, explained how Bragg's prosecution was a significant deviation from the legal framework that's already been established by federal authorities. The committee also heard from a constitutional scholar called Elizabeth, who explained in detail how the trial violated Trump's rights. And Andrew Bailey, shout out from Missouri, said it was clearly politically motivated. Now, we know a fundamental principle of American justice is that no individual is above the law. And you know the rule on this. Anybody who says that, we have to deduct 20 IQ points. Sorry, it applies to everybody. But just as important is the precept is that prosecutors prosecute conduct, not individuals. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, however, ran for office on a platform of investigating and prosecuting Trump. bragging about his extensive experience suing President Trump. And he did that. We just listened to the clip. But the same prosecutor, Mark Pomerantz, after Alvin Bragg said he was not going to prosecute charges, Mark Pomerantz threw a hissy fit. And then he leaked a resignation letter. And he attacked Alvin Bragg. He said, you're a little too soft, buddy boy. You're a little too marshmallowy over there, all right? Being a little too soft, a little too timid. That same prosecutor, Mark Pomerantz, they wrote a book about it and was all over the media. And the book premiered after Trump declared his candidacy. And so Pomerantz then told everything. So we have a lot of problems here. This report explains all the different ways that Bragg's prosecution was terrible. These infirmities include, but are not limited to, Bragg's unconstitutional and unprecedented, they have a graphic on this, Russian nesting doll theory of criminal liability. Remember those little Russian dolls where you just open them up and there's another one inside, you open that up, and another one's all the way down to the little itty bitty one, super cool and cute. Never had to reach unanimity, says that you could just tuck them in there and the jurors didn't even have to be unanimous on any of the elements that were inside. Also, Bragg usurped the federal government, right? They investigated this. They declined to do anything about it. And Judge Juan Merchan is a biased and partisan piece of crap. Says, here's what's going on. They didn't write that. Says, egregious legal rulings before and during the trial all cut against Trump. Here's what the judge did. He failed to recuse himself. He has political bias. He donated to Biden twice, and his daughter works for Joe. The unconstitutional gag order he imposed on Trump violated his First Amendment rights and our First Amendment rights. Judge Merchan's admission of plainly admissible, irrelevant, and unfairly prejudicial testimony against Trump, everything that Stormy Daniels was coming out, talking about all the gratuitous stuff that never happened, which was clearly meant to prejudice the jurors, and Judge Merchan's refusal to allow Bradley Smith, the FEC guy, to come in and testify. He just said, well, the jury can think about whatever they want, that rule says. So in other words, the jury could apply a federal law to a state level crime because the judge just allowed it. The court doesn't have any jurisdiction over that. But it could be another crime for the purposes of this case. They say, look, President Trump never had a fair shot in Manhattan, obviously. In a more neutral jurisdiction where a politically ambitious prosecutor was not motivated by partisanship, Trump would have never been found guilty. The case would have never been charged if you had an honest person behind it. But we didn't. We had a whole cabal of dishonest people, including Colangelo. Says, but Manhattan is anything but a neutral jurisdiction. Trump promised to appeal, stating, we're going to fight for our Constitution. And this is far from over. But the Democrats' use of lawfare accomplished its short-term goal. It removed Trump from the campaign trail, diverted attention away from Biden and his missteps and policies. And since Alvin Bragg announced last year his political prosecution of Trump, the committee and the select subcommittee have conducted oversight of these prosecutions, and the state and local prosecution by popularly elected prosecutors raises serious concerns. And while Bragg and congressional Democrats dismiss these concerns, the committee has taken steps to assure that certain federal officials have a more neutral venue. Now, our work is not done here, but this interim report shows how Trump had his constitutional and his legal rights absolutely violated. And we have covered this many times. It was bad law. It was a bad jurisdiction. It was a bad judge. It was a group of bad prosecutors. The whole thing was rigged from top to bottom, through and through. And so the committee is continuing to investigate this, and we're glad they released this report, but we're much looking forward to this new hearing, which hopefully happens. They were supposed to be scheduled for a hearing on the 12th, July 12th, with Alvin Bragg and Colangelo themselves to come in and testify, but they're not going to be doing that. According to a source now, that has been postponed. Oh no. Wonder why. Now, a new hearing date is TBD, so that has not come about yet. But they did have a hearing today where they brought in some other individuals to comment on the rigged trial. And this is one exchange that took place here. We have Harriet Hageman, from a representative from Wyoming, is asking some questions on this. Here's what one sounded like.
Law guy, what the standard of review is for that kind of error, and sometimes if it's abuse of discretion, courts give trial judges a lot of leeway, but it doesn't mean the decision wasn't right, wasn't wrong.
Judge Wilson, do you believe that Judge Merchan committed reversible error in excluding Mr. Smith but allowing Mr. Cohen to testify on these issues?
In and of itself, that may not be enough to secure a reversal of the conviction, but there is a concept in appellate law, a cumulative error. And what I believe we've seen in the Trump trial is a series of errors, one piled upon the other, cumulative errors that when you put them all together show that Donald Trump did not have a fair trial and that his conviction should be reversed.
I'm absolutely convinced that his conviction will be reversed. And I also believe that Judge Merchan was well aware of that when he made the decisions during the course of trial that he did. I found his decisions to be egregious reversible error on so many different levels. Thank you all for being here today. And with that,
Yeah, and that's in addition to all of the other things that are happening, one of which, of course, is the immunity problem that they have just run into. So not only did we have bad prosecutors, bad judges who were had daughters working for Joe, who made donations to Joe, who showed up on podcasts, scolding Trump for posting on Twitter and stuff like that. Daughter was talking about that in podcasts. The list goes on. But they also brought in a ton of official act evidence in the trial. Michael Cohen got checks in 2017. Trump was the president. So the checks literally were signed while Trump was the president. Now you might say those are personal checks. Maybe those are not official checks, but we don't know. We never had a hearing to make that determination, and the Supreme Court said you got to do that. So we have so many problems with this case. A lot of people still celebrating on the left, saying Trump has been a convicted felon and all that stuff, even though sentencing has not happened yet. Sentencing may not happen. Matthew Colangelo was clearly a Biden operative hitman, was referencing Jeffrey Zients, Biden's White House chief of staff, to get his job with Tish. Got his job with Tish and has been working the Trump line ever since. So the political prosecution continues to be exposed. These are some of the most dishonest people. They swear oaths to uphold the law and prosecute justice fairly, and they're doing the opposite of that. So they should be ashamed of themselves. We're going to continue to cover it, and we're looking forward to hearing Colangelo and Bragg testify. We hope you join us as we do. If you want to be sure you don't miss it, thank you for subscribing. That's a great way to stick around and make sure that you see what's happening here, because that will be happening hopefully at some point soon, and we'll look forward to covering it and more back here on the next one. All right, my friends, now let's jump over to the SAVE Act, because we've got Trump now on board. President Trump endorsing the SAVE Act, drafted by Chip Roy. You know who he is. We're going to go through the act in some detail, including the one-pager that's going to say what this whole thing does. But as expected, Joe Biden is going to be vetoing it because they love to rig elections. In fact, that's probably the only way that they can make any dent in the slow-burning catastrophe that they have caused for themselves, is by cheating. And so now they're going to work hard to make sure that nothing is fixed in 2024. Trump has endorsed this, as has Speaker Johnson. And so we're going to assemble what is going on with this most recent battle over the 2024 election cycle. Here's what Trump said. Says Republicans must pass the SAVE Act or go home and cry yourself to sleep. Woo! Non-citizen illegal migrants are getting the right to vote, being pushed by crooked Democrat politicians who are not being stopped by an equally dishonest Justice Department. Our whole voting system is under siege. Harmeet, shout out, and David, go to court and get this stopped now. Did you hear him, Harmeet Dillon? She's amazing. Says the Dems can't win on their policies. The only way they can win is to cheat, which is true because they're incompetent and their candidate can't even talk. They do it at every level of government, and they do it well. That's how they get an incapacitated moron like Joe Biden elected. And it's not huge swarms of cheating. It's like 10,000 votes here and there. Get tough, RNC. Michael W., Speaker Johnson, and all the state and local Republican politicians. Man, he is just calling people out right here. It's like you got called to the principal's office. Man, I'm glad my name's not on here. I'd be like, oh, crap, I'm in big trouble or something. It's actually an honor to be on this list, okay? I'm only teasing. It's an absolute honor to be on the list. I should be on this list because we should be doing more. You're right, Mr. President. Sorry about it. We're going to get to work. The Justice Department is corrupt, and they won't do a thing to help. No, they're behind it. They have no shame. All I can say is that if I'm elected president, we will pursue election fraudsters at levels never seen before, and they will be sent to prison for long periods of time. We already know who you are. Don't do it! Zuckerbucks, be careful! Man, I like this. I like it. I'm a little scared myself. It's like, I better get to work. All right, let's get to it. Let's go. All right. Sorry, Mr. President. We're going to step it up over here. And I also like that he's putting a little bit of a chill in the air. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg, punk. We know what you did in 2020 with the CEFC, whatever that was. Funding your ballot harvesting collection operations. We know what you did. Don't you do it again, buddy boy. Trump's watching this time. You're busted. So, all right, we're all on notice here. Step it up. Especially you, Hard Meat Dylan. And the rest of everybody else. All right, get to work. All right, so we love Hard Meat Dylan, just to be ultra clear about that. She does amazing work. We love shouting her out. So here is Mike Johnson. Now, he comes out and he explains, listen, we got to get this thing passed. The Democrats are manipulating this. We have a big problem here. If there are millions and millions of people who are coming in, and even a small percentage of them actually get a way to vote, no matter how that is, and we see people all over the place, all of the election misinformation denial brigade, they're out all over the place. We passed a bill that says you can't vote. Oh, really? Okay, that's great. Was there also a rule against coming into the country illegally? Curious. Did they follow that? Oh, okay. So they just came across the border illegally, violating federal law, and you just say that there's rules and there's checks and balances, and people are going to fill out forms honestly and like check a box and all this stuff. Like the system is just going to govern itself because you have some rules in place. These people don't follow the rules. Morons. That's the whole point. So, all right, Congress is trying to figure it out, what to do about it, but you're going to hear a bunch of people say, no, there's laws that protect about it. Just dismiss them because there's laws that say they shouldn't be here in the first place that they don't care about. So no one follows the law, not even the people who are collecting the forms. So here's Mike Johnson, who says, look, there's a lot of people here. They're trying to lie to us about what the Democrats are saying this bill's about. We live in a country, citizens should have a say in how their country is being governed.
They've also been misleading everybody about the SAVE Act, which will be on the floor that you've heard about this morning. It's a very important piece of legislation. They're claiming to oppose the bill because they say it's going to make it harder to vote, but they know that that is not true. Many of the Democrats want all of these illegals to participate in our federal elections.
Yes,
they
do.
want them to vote. There's no other conclusion that you can draw. When the White House announced they would veto the bill, they effectively handed our elections over to all of these illegal aliens that have come here. And the number is far greater than what is being reported. We were in conference this morning. One of our colleagues from the state of Kentucky was down at the Texas border over the last week. And he was there with top border officials. It was down south of Laredo. And he said that he and the colleagues that were there personally witnessed 9 illegals cross the border and disappear into the woods. And 2 Border Patrol agents tried to follow them on foot, and they lost them. And they came back, and our colleagues then asked, well, how will you account for those numbers, to send to DHS so they can add them to the number? And they said, we can't count them. What do you mean? Well,
why?
The secretary in DHS does not allow us to count anyone unless we can say conclusively that they didn't cross back over the border and go back. And we lost them in the woods, so we don't know. So they don't even count in the got-away numbers. This is how it's being done. Whatever number you think, whatever number is being reported is grossly underreported. I've been saying for some time, I think it's probably close to 16 million. That may be an underestimate. And it's a serious problem. And we cannot allow a federal election to be jeopardized by people who can run into the local welfare office, sign up for taxpayer benefits, and check a box that says, I'm a citizen and I want to vote. This is common sense legislation. Chip Roy has done an extraordinary job. Others have, preparing this, getting it ready. We have to make sure that we don't have an election that is flawed in this way. In states that are trying to catch these criminals, they're identifying thousands of legal aliens who are indeed registering and trying to vote.
Yeah, of course.
Some states have already done their own audits. This will make sure that we can prevent this from happening, and so we've got to do this.
It'd be nice to do that.
You should ask every Democrat, if they're voting against this legislation, how in the world they can justify it.
Well, because they want it to happen. That's why. We already know the answer on that there, Mike. But it is a good excerpt from the speaker saying this is pretty important stuff. And just run those numbers in your head, okay? 16 million people by his numbers. Do you know that that is 32 Wyomings? 32 Wyomings. So you might double that. I mean, if the number is double that, which might be like 30 million, 32 million, who the hell knows? Who has any idea? They don't even know. It's been happening it's happening my whole life, this whole border problem, my entire life. I'm an Arizona guy. I've been here my whole life. Every year we have a new governor. We're going to fix the border. No, you're not, liar. It's been happening for as long as I've been alive and longer than that. So is it 30 million, 32? I don't know. Could be 64 Wyomings. And if you have 16 million people that give the conservative number, 1% of that is 160,000 votes. 160,000 votes. It was 10,000 in Arizona, 11,000 in Arizona, 11,000 in Georgia. So it's just the law of big numbers, which again always begs the question, why are they so confident, or why is the Biden people so confident? Why are they standing behind him when he can't talk or think or walk or speak? He's gonna lose, right? Unless they just have the numbers, unless they just don't care. You can put the dumbest person on your team at starting quarterback or whatever. If you're up by 80 points, it doesn't matter because you're still going to win, right? Put them in for the fourth quarter. No one cares. So, all right, here's the SAVE Act. Let's see what is inside this bill so we have some knowledge about what is going on and how it works. Here is the one sheet. It says, here's the plan. Radical progressives are taking drastic steps to alter America through open borders, right? Just kind of water everything down, yeah, and release millions of illegal aliens into our communities by waging a full-scale assault on election integrity laws. Says the problem. Since taking office, Joe Biden's administration has released at least 4.6 million illegals into the country with 1.8 million known gotaways. So that's like almost 3.5 Wyomings right there. In many states, these illegal aliens are eligible for driver's licenses and other benefits, right? They get them everywhere. And there's ample opportunities to illegally register to vote in federal elections because you have a driver's license. In some jurisdictions, non-citizens are even able to vote in local elections, right? So they say, we're going to give you a ballot. You can only vote in local elections. Don't mark up the federal elections because you can't vote there. But you can vote in local elections, but it's on the same ballot. So they give them the same ballot. While only U.S. citizens can legally vote in federal elections, federal law has generally preempted and undermined state laws that require proof of citizenship and register to vote in such elections. So then they turn around and they say, well, the federal laws don't require proof of citizenship, and it's not in there. So you can't, as a state, create you can't raise the floor. In other words, you can't create an additional requirement if the feds haven't already said that. And what happens is, well, the states would say, well, we wouldn't need you to put that in there if you actually secured the border, dummies. So if we didn't have an illegal immigration problem, we wouldn't have a bunch of people trying to vote in elections, and we wouldn't have to we wouldn't need proof of citizenship because the people walking into the polling places would be citizens. So they break the system, and then they say you can't fix it to address the problem that they created. And then they turn around and say it's just federal law. It's just federal law. So what does the SAVE Act do? It amends the National Voter Registration Act at the federal level, which has governed state voter registration since 1993, to require states to get proof of citizenship and identity in person when registering to vote. Seems like a real shocking idea. I know. Wow. Genius. The requirement applies regardless of whether an individual is registering to vote at a DMV, voter registration agency, welfare office, or by mail. Gotta prove who you are. It also directs states to establish an alternative process for applicants that don't have documentary proof of citizenship, but are in fact citizens with religious reasons or otherwise, to submit signed attestations, and then that can go to election assistance commissions that then makes an official determination. So it's like a process. Now, it also directs the states to provide reasonable accommodations for disabled Americans that have discrepancies. And so it would require states to establish a program to remove non-citizens from their existing voter rolls. How they get on there in the first place, who knows? And gives states a no-cost access to DHS and Social Security Administration databases to do it. So every state, purge your rolls. Think the Democrats want that? Obviously not. It would empower citizens to bring civil suits against election officials that fail to uphold citizenship requirements. Ooh. And it would expand the NVRA's existing private right of action and add penalties for election officials that register non-citizens to vote in federal elections. It also directs the Election Assistance Commission to promptly update any guidance associated with the SAVE Act and streamline things by following the Paperwork Reduction Act. So all of that coming from Chip Roy. And here's what it looks like in writing. So that was just the one sheet. But here is the actual bill. It's a 22-pager, so I just want to show you it. We're not going to read through it. A lot of technical stuff in it. But it looks substantive, right? There's a lot of details to it. And so that is what they are contemplating now in Congress. Now, of course, Biden promises to veto all of that because they love rigged elections. Here's what Mike Johnson shared. He says, it should alarm every American that the sitting president of the United States, who has opened our border to over 9 million illegals, just announced that he would veto our bill to prevent non-citizens from voting. And ultimately, this is what this is about. The idea that both of these things are going to happen right now, in other words, the House is going to pass this and the Senate's going to pass this, and this would go in and be signed by Joe Biden, is obviously not going to happen. Joe Biden can't even talk right now. So it's about creating a wedge. In politics, you got to create a wedge issue. This is a pretty interesting one. Why are non-citizens voting? How does that poll? Do average Americans endorse that idea? Or do they support this idea that only citizens should vote or not? And so they're just creating this. They're calling it the SAFE Act and Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. And now Biden just opposes it. So it says the administration strongly opposes the SAVE Act. They say it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. Oh, okay. So but it's also illegal to come across the border illegally. That's the point. They don't care. And it's a federal crime punishable by prison and fines. Just like coming across the border illegally. They don't care. So they did that illegally. So what do you think is going to prevent them from voting? The alleged justification for this bill is based on easily disproven falsehoods. Hopefully they do that for us. Let's see. Says, additionally, oh, I guess they didn't. Making a false claim of citizenship or unlawfully voting in an election is punishable by removal from the United States. Oh my gosh. You're kidding. You might remove them, which you're not going to do. And we know that you're not going to do because you're not doing it. Got it. States already have effective safeguards in place to verify voters' eligibility and maintain the accuracy of voter rolls. No, they don't, obviously, because we can't check in with Social Security Administration or Homeland to verify. So we want to do that, and the states would now have access to do that. This bill would do nothing to safeguard our elections. Yeah, it would. It would make sure that only citizens could vote, but all right. But it would make it much harder for eligible Americans to register to vote. By showing ID that you need to show everywhere? And it would increase the risk that eligible voters are purged from voter rolls. Amazing. Now, the evidence is clear that the current laws to prevent non-citizen voting are working as intended. It's extraordinarily rare for non-citizens to break the law by voting in federal elections. Yeah, right. The president has been clear. He will continue fighting to protect Americans' sacred right to vote in free, fair, and secure elections, including by calling on Congress to pass the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and Freedom to Vote Act. If Republicans really want to do something, right, so they're going to wedge this back, fix our broken immigration system, they should vote on the border deal that Biden wanted so that we can do our jobs and fix the border. So you see, they break the border. Then they say it's already illegal, so we don't have to fix anything. So they're going to get all these ballots to vote in local elections, and then they'll just mark a little box here. And of course, it's already illegal. There's no way, and it's all being verified, and blah, blah, blah. So don't believe it for a second. We know that they are just waving people in, giving them little Democrat stickers, and throwing them into the mix. So here is Chip Roy explaining what his bill does and how this all works. And he was on with Fox discussing.
81% of voters specifically say they are in favor of voter ID. So Democrats are going to vote against something that 81% of Americans are in favor of? Really?
Yeah, well, I was proud to join with the Speaker of the House and my friend Mike Lee over in the Senate to introduce the SAVE Act. It's legislation that I authored. This is legislation that would require proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. We don't think this is that complicated. As you said, it's an 80% plus issue across the board among the American people. But Democrats, as usual, are so out of step and out of touch that they're going to fight it. They're going to challenge it. And they're going to try to stand up for the continued destruction of election integrity in this country, rather than just making a simple statement that only citizens should be voting in our federal elections. We have the power to do that under the Constitution. We should do it. There's been credible indication and evidence of mass efforts to recruit people who are here illegally and non-citizens to vote. Virginia had to clean off their rolls last year. They had 1,500 they had to clean off. There's thousands of examples across the country. Let's fix this right now, even as the president has had his lawlessness destroy our borders and import millions of people into this country. And they've even acknowledged that they intend to try to register these individuals to vote, using welfare rolls to do it, using Medicaid to do it. Let's stand up right now as America and say only citizens should vote, and you should have to provide proof of citizenship to register.
Well, I would.
Pretty obvious thing, but a lot of people don't want that to happen because it's too complicated. They're not going to be able to figure out how to register or something. No, obviously that's fake. They know they are helping people with this unspoken idea. It's not an instruction to go and get a ballot to vote, but you can participate. You can do this. It's your right to do it. You're allowed to do this and do that and do this. And they just, if they happen to vote accordingly, then they happen to vote accordingly. And they're advised not to do it, maybe even, but they're going to do it. That's the whole point. So Trump endorses the SAVE Act. We'll be curious to see how this issue continues to create a wedge between the two sides. Obviously, the Senate will never pass this. Joe Biden will never sign it into law. But the question is, why won't certain Democrats in House races, in Senate races, why won't they stand behind a very simple principle that if you have a country, you should have citizens voting for the future of the country, not other people who already broke the law and are here illegally? Why should they participate? They shouldn't. And Democrats should have to explain that to their constituents, why their vote is being diluted by other people who are not citizens. Their share of representation is being mathematically reduced by every illegal vote that happens. Their share of American representation in democracy is being thrown in the toilet. Why is that happening? They should have to answer for that. And hopefully the Republicans continue to beat this issue now, between now and the election. And we'll be here continuing to cover it, my friends. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching. We've got a great segment coming up next. We're talking about the 25th Amendment and why Joe Biden has got to go. That's according to some people in Washington. And so we'll see you over there and back here on the next one. But we're not done yet, my friends. We're still live here. And so let's hit our third and final segment on the day. The 25th Amendment and Joe Biden's removal. Will Kamala and the cabinet do it? Some people say it's appropriate and it's time because Joe Biden can't think or speak or talk or walk. He has no brain, even by his own admission. He says, no, I'm fine. It's only my brain. It's not a joke, Mr. President. People have questions about that. And so we've got reaction on the Hill. A lot of Republicans talking about it. Mike Johnson says it's appropriate. Josh Hawley in the Senate brought it up. Tim Burchett got asked about this. And we know Karine is still fielding and responding to all of the questions from the media about Parkinson's doctors and why Karine keeps lying to them. Maybe she's forgetting things too. But a lot of interesting things happened. And Peter Doocy was also there with Karine getting into it about who's actually running the country. Is it Joe Biden or is it Hunter? A lot of questions here. But here's Mike Johnson. He tells us, the 25th Amendment would be appropriate. Says, if I am in the cabinet hanging out with Joe and Kamala and the rest of them, we're certainly scratching our heads here wondering if this guy can be trusted with our nuclear codes. Probably not.
After the debate, if I were in the Biden cabinet, that was how the question was presented to me. Would I be mulling over the 25th Amendment, applying the fourth clause of the 25th Amendment, which has never before been employed in that way? And I answered honestly, yes, I would. If in good conscience, if I was in the Biden cabinet, I would be wrestling with that question because I would know what we all know now, that Joe Biden is not up to the task. And it's a dangerous situation for the reasons we articulated earlier. So there's a time to every purpose under heaven. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I think the 25th Amendment is appropriate here. Now, we know, and Chip knows, we all know that the House doesn't have the authority to do that. It's the Vice President of the United States that has to initiate that process. We don't have any involvement unless there's a disagreement between the president and what the vice president and the cabinet decide. So
we're going to come back on that. We're going to take a look at the 25th Amendment to see how it works exactly. But there's also a provision that says you can establish a commission by law, and then by law, they could also remove the president. And so we don't have anything like that. Johnson is saying they're not going to be creating a commission. We've got another clip of Nancy Pelosi. They were attempting to do something like that for Trump. But here is the rest of Johnson.
We're far away from that eventuality.
We're not going to do that.
I think the notion that the 25th Amendment would be appropriate here is something that most Republicans and frankly most Americans would agree with if they understood the process and how that works. And I think you'll hear a lot more talk about it. I'm under no illusion that they're going to do that. But no. If I were in the cabinet and Chip was in the cabinet, if any of us were in the cabinet, we would have to honestly say that that's something we'd have to wrestle with. So, yeah.
All right. And we'll see if Kamala does it or not. Probably not, but there's some good basis for it based on Joe Biden's performance recently. But I want to walk through the amendment. And before we get into it, there was this interesting little blurb here. You can see I pulled this document from the governmentinfo.gov website. It's the 25th Amendment summary, and they attach this little historical summation of it. And so let's run through this. What is the 25th Amendment? Well, they tell us it was an effort to resolve some issues about the president. What happens on death of the president? What happens on removal or resignation? All these questions were floating around, so they had to write this amendment. What do we do if the president becomes so disabled to such a degree that he can't even debate or take the tall steps? The practice had been well established that the vice president becomes president when the president died. That happened 8 times in our history. Now, presumably, the vice president would become president if the president was removed, whether the vice president would become acting president when the actual president became unable to carry on, and whether the president could resume office were 2 questions that had divided scholars and experts. Also, 7 vice presidents had died in office and 1 had resigned. So for some 20% of the United States history, there was no vice president to step up. So we had a missing vice president, but an actual president. But the most insoluble problem was that of presidential inability. President Garfield was lying in a coma for 80 days before succumbing to the effects of his assassin's bullets. So our president, as bad as Joe Biden is, he's like almost in a coma, but not officially. So Garfield, so what's worse? Like 3.5 years of like 80% coma or 80 days of 100% coma? You know, how do you balance this out? What's more incompetent? Hard to say. So at least Joe Biden's, you know, he can talk a little bit. So he's not actually in a coma mostly. But anyways, so 80 days, they're saying, what do we do about this? Wilson was also invalid for the last 18 months of his term. He had a stroke. All right. So he was just out, like Wilson, gone. But, you know, they weren't expected to be on TV, so nobody probably knew. With its unanswered questions, and Wilson, I'm not sure that they had that at that time, right? Wasn't he like 1913? With its unanswered questions, who was to determine the existence of an inability? How does it work? How is the matter to be handled if the president wanted to continue? When should the vice president act? Would he be acting president or president? What's to happen if the president recovers and comes back? Congress finally proposed this amendment after Kennedy's assassination. And with the vice presidency vacant, the president, who had previously had a heart attack. So Kennedy gets shot. They put in LBJ. He winks. And he had a heart attack. So the amendment saw multiple use during the 70s, resulted for the first time in our history with the accession of the presidency and the vice presidency of 2 men who had not faced voters. First, VP Spiro Agnew resigned as Nixon's VP. Then Nixon nominated Gerald Ford. Then they took out Nixon. Hearings were then held, and Nixon resigned. Ford then immediately succeeded him, never been elected to an office, then took the presidential oath. Then Ford nominated Rockefeller to be vice president. Hearings were held in both houses, and that the Nixon coup was over. Confirmation voted, Rockefeller took the oath of office, and these 2 dudes were now in charge, thanks to the CIA. So that's pretty cool too. So anyways, so all of that is what led to the creation of this. Now they have an opportunity. Now they have an option to also come in and take the president out. So if the president dies, VP becomes president. Easy. Got that one. Section 1. Section 2. Whenever there's a vacancy in the office of the VP, the president can make a new vice president. Got it. Section 2 is easy. Section 3. Whenever the president transmits to the president pro tem of the Senate, so the president says, I cannot do my duties, then the vice president becomes acting president. And you've seen this one also used like when the president goes and gets a colonoscopy. They temporarily transfer a written declaration over, hey, I'm going to get a colonoscopy for like 3 hours. Dick Cheney, you're the president. All right. And then Bush comes back. Now, Section 4 is the big one. Hasn't happened before yet. Could it happen now? Whenever the vice president, so Kamala, and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, which we don't have another body right now, transmit to the president pro tem and of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, so to both houses, their written declaration. So Kamala and Mayorkas and all of them are sitting around. They all, Buttigieg comes out. Garland's in there. Joe Biden can't do it anymore. Yeah, right. Give me a break. So they're all just good little sheep like the rest of them. And they like Joe not being a puppet. They've had him as a puppet for the last 3.5 years. So they're not changing that up at all. So if they all come, they write their written declaration. So they write a letter. Kamala signs it. They all sign it. They say Joe's unable to discharge the powers unless the party wants him gone. Then they'll all do it. If they get an order from Obama to do it, then they'll do it. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. The vice president shall immediately assume the powers and the duties as acting president. So they discharge, they notify the Senate, they notify the House, the cabinet is on board, That's the game, okay? Kamala's president, acting president right then and there. Then, if the president contests it, so they take it away, when the president transmits, he says, no, I'm fine. He shall resume the powers and the duties of the office immediately, unless basically everybody agrees that the president is unfit. Unless they transmit within 4 days, a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of the other body, they must transmit. Therefore, thereupon Congress shall decide the issue, right? So if there's a debate about this, if the president has a problem, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose. If Congress within 21 days after the receipt of the latter written declaration, there's some timing, determines by 2/3 vote that the president is unable to discharge, the VP shall be the acting president. Otherwise, if not, the president gets the powers back. So let's go back to this section. So here it says, when the president says, I'm good, he resumes the powers unless the vice president and the majority transmit within 4 days their written declaration that he cannot do it. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue. So that's a little bit confusing there, but it's a battle, and I think it'd be up to interpretation. Well, Congress will receive it, pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker, unless, yeah, so there might be a gray area in there where the vice president claims to be the acting president and the president claims, like there's an overlap, it's like the mailbox rule in contract law. Somebody sends notice and then they send other notice, and Congress is making decisions. And so who is the acting president and who is not? Still kind of messy there. But the point is, there's a process for this now. And I still don't think that Kamala and the rest of the cabinet will do it. Now, they tried to create that other body. So they wanted to do this when Trump was in the office. So here's Pelosi with her COVID mask on, explaining that they were going to try to create that other body that could then weigh this and then remove Trump because he was so dangerous. Here is Pelosi making that same point.
So I hope you will prepare yourselves for a civics lesson or a presentation on the Constitution of the United States.
Tell us.
The 25th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified in 1967 after the assassination of President Kennedy, with strong bipartisan support. Members of Congress have a duty to take all necessary action to preserve continuity of government and protect the stability and integrity of our democracy for the future. That is why today, again, it is my honor to welcome Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland, a constitutional scholar, as he introduces legislation to establish a commission on presidential capacity to discharge the duties and the powers and duties of the office.
All right, so they were going to create their own little commission and then fill it with their people, and then that commission would not be Trump's cabinet, right? And then that commission could declare Trump invalid, and they could usurp his authority under the 25th Amendment. So that didn't go anywhere, obviously, and I think it would have been unconstitutional anyways. But here is, unconstitutional unless Trump would have signed it into law. Then they could have created it, but Trump never would have signed it, right? That's the check on this. A president's not going to sign another committee that's going to then take the power away from his cabinet to remove him from office. The likelihood of that, I think, will be low. But here is Hawley. He got asked about this and also brought it up. Says, if Democrats were really concerned about the good of the country, if they really cared about us, which they don't, they'd invoke the 25th Amendment. If Biden can't run a campaign, he should not have the nuclear codes. Makes a lot of sense to us. Maybe they'll do it.
First up, there's a live shot bottom of our screen right now as we are waiting this White House press briefing. If you were in the room, your question to the White House is what? What should we be demanding as the American public, this White House tells us today?
Well, my question is, why hasn't the 25th Amendment been invoked? That's the amendment that says when the president is incapable of discharging the functions of his office, he needs to be removed and replaced. The cabinet can do that. I mean, we're talking about the election, and of course that's important, but let's talk about right now. Let's talk about the security of the American people. This guy has the nuclear codes, let's not forget. We've all seen the debate footage. We've all seen his press conferences. I've seen him at the State of the Union. This guy is clearly not capable, not only of running for re-election, that's the least of it. He's not capable of being president. He ought to be removed right now.
So
first up,
that's actually a true statement. Okay, no, don't get me wrong. It's true. If we were a real country and we had a functional executive branch, well, we'd want an actual president in there. Somebody who is really, really, really good. Somebody who's intelligent, kind of the best of America in there. And you'd want them to make decisions, not just be a figurehead puppet that was a placeholder for a bureaucracy. That would be ideal, so that there's somebody accountable for all of these decisions and all of these mistakes and so on. But they don't want that at all. And the question is, politically, do we also want that? Because Joe Biden's a disaster politically for them. And if you remove him, then you get some fresh face in there. You get some fresh meat. You get Kamala in there. She appoints Newsom. Now they've got some plausibility when they rig the election. And this is a concern that I've had for quite a while. If Biden's not at the top of the ticket, if they bring in Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, then they'll just say, oh, no wonder Gretchen won because she activated the women vote. Or, oh, Whitmer won because she recreated the Rust Belt or whatever, right? In the Midwest Rust Belt, they all rallied to her. So they'll come up with some narrative that will be harder to combat. At Joe Biden, with him at the helm, they say he wins. No one in America or the world will believe it. And the credibility of the deep state will have been blown in one election, one fell swoop. So it's kind of why we want Joe Biden to stick around, even if it does mean the end of America. Well, anyways, or wherever it is we're going. I don't know that we could go down any faster, but time will tell. Even Tim Burchett got asked about this. So he was roaming around in the halls of Congress. This clip came over from Howard Mortman, shout out, over on X, and grab this one.
I got to get in there, guys. Those post offices are not going to name themselves. What do you got?
What do you think about this resolution possibly invoking the 25th Amendment?
I think politically, it's probably not a good idea, but I think reality-wise, it is a good idea. I think we need to put party above everything else. We know Joe Biden on the ballot. It's a sinking ship, and that's the argument not to do it. But I worry about our country if there's an international event or some kind of tragedy that happens, and we have to have some real leadership. And I question whether we have that now.
What do you mean it'd be a bad idea politically? Do you mean like how?
Yeah, I mean, because it's best to be to leave Biden on the ballot. The Democrats, they won't even show up to vote for him. They'll just leave that one blank and go vote elsewhere.
So do you think Harris would be a stronger candidate?
Harris.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, I think about that for a second. But yeah, I think she would be over the current president.
I agree.
I think she's a rallying point for certain folks, and this current president, there's nobody really rallying around him.
Energy, enthusiasm. Smart.
Do you think she would be a good contender against Trump?
No, I think Trump would walk the country with her. I think he really would. I don't find her to be a very good candidate. Got a terrible job on the border, and that's the major issue right now.
Yeah, good analysis. And I swear I did not listen to that clip before he spoke, but it's basically exactly what I just said. That politically, it makes a lot of great sense to keep Joe Biden at the top. For our country, it's a disaster, and we're doomed every day that he is in office because he's not actually doing anything. It's the worst of the worst can make things happen in the White House, and there is zero accountability for it. They just blame Joe. In fact, Joe might just be the walking scapegoat for this entire catastrophe. If you're going to ransack the Treasury and rout the country, well, one way to do that is to just have a scapegoat, a figurehead who you're going to pin everything on, and then just put him out to pasture at the end of your feast. So Karine got asked about a lot of this today. says, Joe Biden's competent. He's fine. He had bad night. But she also got asked about this doctor kerfuffle because we learned yesterday, there was a lot of reporting that there was a Parkinson's doctor who took 8 visits to the White House. I think we talked about that as well. And then they came out, they released a letter from the doctor. The doctor said, well, I was treating other Parkinson's patients there. Okay, apparently Parkinson's is all over the place at the White House. So they have the doctor who comes in once a month to treat everybody there, except Joe Biden, which is just wild. So what I think more likely than not happened is they reverse causation on this thing. So they filled in the gaps. We need an explanation to explain why the doctor came 8 times. Well, he can't tell you why he was here, so just say he was there for other patients. Some genius in the room came up with that idea. They didn't tell Karine that yesterday. She should have used that excuse yesterday, but she didn't. She came up with some other excuse like national security, we can't talk about it, whatever. And then they released the letter after the fact. So she looked like an idiot again because she keeps telling them stuff about these doctors and these medical visits, and it's all not true. And so the doctor, then they released a statement after she came out, gave him a different story. So we picked this up. They're asking her about the doctor. Like, hey, Karine, moron, why do you keep lying to us?
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem to explicitly describe the nature of Dr. Kennard's meeting with Dr. O'Connor. So can you say whether that one meeting was related to care for the president himself?
I can say that it was not.
Not for the president.
Can I just ask why that information that was released last night just wasn't said at the briefing yesterday?
Well, no.
Why didn't you tell us all of that? Why didn't you tell us and you released it after the fact? So the media, again, are you lying to what's going on, Karine?
Actually, a lot of what is in the letter was said at the briefing, to be very, very clear. I said many of the things that were laid out in the letter was actually repeated right here behind this lectern.
You're an
at
idiot.
This podium yesterday. It was what
said that.
Hold on. I said many of the things.
Not the important
and we
things,
got clarification, obviously, from Dr.
Wow.
O'Connor, but it was in line with what I said. When I said only 3, right? I said only 3 visits that this particular doctor had. I said a neurologist. What I was not able to confirm is the name, and the reason why is because we do not share private information. That is something that we respect, and we wanted to make sure that we protected our consultants here that work with the White House Medical Unit, their security as well.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so the media has just basically had enough of her. Why are you continuing to lie to us? Enough. Now, we've seen a bunch of Democrats just fall right back in line. They've got whiplash because they were racing off of the sinking ship towards the life raft. They're running hard off the pier. And then all of a sudden, they get yanked back. Joe Biden comes back and he's whoa! They get yanked right back into Joe Biden's orbit. Now suddenly they support him again. And so AOC has flipped. Jerry Nadler has flipped. They are all coming back. Hakeem Jeffries. What are you talking about? I love Joe Biden. He's amazing. He's great. 3 days ago, they were all in hysterics trying to figure out what to do about this. So this reporter asked Karine, does he feel like he's kind of escaped this mutiny now? He feel like he's kind of in a safety location?
I feel like he's beat back this effort to force him to step aside.
Look, you heard the president yesterday when he called into Morning Joe, did about 18 minutes of Q&A yesterday morning. He spoke very, very, I think, forcefully, passionately about where he stands, about how he sees things moving forward. And we also have said many times, we respect members of Congress, we respect their view. But I also want to say there's a long list of congressional members who have been very clear and in support of this president, whether it's the CBC, who gave a full support, the Congressional Black Caucus, for folks who are watching and are not sure what CBC is. They were very much supportive. They said, we think that, this is Representative Joyce Beatty, to be clear, we think that the call went extremely well. The president was very responsive. Representative Troy Carter, who's also a member of the CBC.
What a nice comment. He finished the whole call.
elated to hear directly from the president, and that he is all in, and we are all in with him. You got a Congressional Hispanic Caucus. They put out a statement in full support of this president, and there are others. And so, look, he is going to focus on continuing to work on behalf of the American people, continuing to build on an unprecedented record that he's been able to get done with many of these congressional members. All
right, a lot of Karine. So, yeah, basically, she's kind of saying, he has survived this. They tried to take him out, and they were unsuccessful. So Peter Doocy says, all right, look, if he's not going anywhere and his brain is fried, what is happening in the Oval Office? Is he in charge of the country, or is Hunty Poo actually running things?
I know we had our chat yesterday.
Yes, thank you,
So
Karine. Does President Biden commit to serving a full second term if reelected?
Yes.
Thank you. We know the president says that his health is fine, but it's just his brain, and that he's sharpest before.
He was joking, by the way. I just want to make sure that that's out there. And he was making a lighthearted joke as he was speaking off. He's speaking off the cuff, and he was making a joke. You know the president; he likes to joke a lot. He's the same guy who says, "I know I look 40," right? So he likes to make jokes. It is a joke. I think people laugh when he says it.
Well, he also says he's sharpest before 8 p.m. So say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Well, who do you call? The First Lady?
He has a team that lets him know of any news that is pertinent and important to the American people. He has someone that is decided, obviously, with his National Security Council on who gets to tell him that news.
So Kevin McCarthy just said that when he was the speaker, many times when we had meetings in the Oval Office, Jill was there as well. When the First Lady's in these meetings, is she making decisions, or is she just advising the president?
No, the president is the president of the United States. He makes decisions.
Why is she in there?
Another family member, President Biden has told me before, he and his son don't have any business dealings together. So what is Hunter Biden doing in White House meetings?
Are you talking about the meeting where they came together from Camp David and the two of them walked to the president's meeting and he was there?
There's a report that aides were struck by his presence during their discussions.
Look, I'm certainly not going to get into private conversations that occur. What I can say is, and I spoke to this before, is that when they came back from Camp David, the president spent a couple days at Camp David with his family. He is very close to his family, as you know. It was the week of 4th of July, which is why his family members were here last week. They walked together, and they walked together into the meeting.
Can you say if Hunter Biden has access to classified information?
No.
Good. That's a good idea, because we don't know what he'd be doing with it, because he has some nefarious activities that may have led him to be compromised, which is why it's not a good idea that he is the acting president, or Jill Biden being the acting president. Not good for America. So we've got conversations about the 25th Amendment happening. Karine is still trying to figure out how to deal with the media. The media still has a lot of questions about this. But will Kamala invoke the 25th Amendment? Will Joe Biden go quietly into that good night? I don't think so. I don't think the cabinet would agree with that either, unless things got so bad that they have to act. But so far, it's not gotten there for them. So we'll be here to see if it does. We'll love it if you join us as that coverage continues, my friends. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for inviting a friend or family member to come over and join us when we go live. We've got another great segment going to get queued up for you if you missed it on our live. Bragg's prosecutor busted Matthew Colangelo, we know, was very close with the White House Chief of Staff, Jeffrey Zients. And so we'll cue that one up if you missed that here on the next one. All right, my friends, that is it for us on the day. We got 3 good segments in the can. We've got 25th Amendment conversation, Trump endorsing the SAVE Act, and Bragg's prosecutor Colangelo busted colluding with Jeffrey Zients, Joe Biden's chief of staff. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. Let's see what you have to say about this, all from our friends on YouTube and locals and Rumble and all across the fruited plain of the interwebs. And we'll keep our eye. Right now, Trump is getting ready to speak, running a little bit late on the day, but he's expected to come out and speak. He's there in Miami. And so Right Side Broadcasting is waiting for that to happen. So we'll just cue that up right there. So if you're keeping an eye on both things, we got those queued up right there. So, my friends, thank you so much for supporting us with your donos, your membos, your love. We appreciate that a lot. Bobsco, bringing in a new membo. What's up, Bobsco? Robert D got gifted a membo, courtesy of Bobsco in the house. Thank you, Bobsco, for that one. Milo Phone Bill says, how did Judge Merchan ever accept an ex post facto law to elevate misdemeanors to felonies? I don't know that it was ex post facto. I think it was already written. So in other words, they didn't pass this law after Trump did the thing and then apply it to him. But it was already existing. I think he just interpreted it to say that it could be aggravated from a misdemeanor into a felony if it met subsection E, but that subsection E has the other crimes provision, and he can interpret the other crimes provision basically however he wants. Gave him carte blanche to read it. And then he turned other misdemeanors. The other crime could be a misdemeanor. Okay, so a misdemeanor could be turned into a felony by referencing another misdemeanor. See how that works? Wild. Congress is prohibited from passing ex post facto laws by the Constitution. And I agree. I just don't think it would be categorized as an ex post facto law. Hey, what's up? Voice of the People says, you'd be surprised who's ghost watching Rob. I don't know. Who could that be? Mom? Hi, Mom. Love you. Hey, what's up? Spud says, Rob, don't sell yourself short, okay? Maybe Mike Johnson is in the market for a Watching the Watchers polo shirt and a matching tracksuit, which we're working on. We got a tracksuit plan in place, working on it. It's still in the ideation stage right now. Spuds, what's up? Thanks for that. Hey, Judge Mental's in the house. Judge Mental. Good to have you, Judge Mental. Glad you're a supporter. Hey, what's up? My pronouns are here. Pronouns are I told you so. Says huge thanks and shout out to somebody from Membo Dono in the house. Second month in a row after Rick D sent one last month. As soon as money allows it, it will be paid forward. Thanks for that, my pronouns. I told you so. That's really generous of you. Very glad that you got some membos here. We're really grateful for the membos that are gifted here. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon that happens. All the membos that we have coming in, it's really great. And I think it's a testimony to the community. People become membos. They love it because we have the best of membos and they invite more membos in. And so it's like, it's amazing. So we're glad to have you here. Thanks for that, my pronouns. Hey, CQED just became a supporter. And if you are a new supporter, a new membo, be sure to check out this morning's Membos Only stream. It was fun. Hey, Cowboy Rob says, I wonder if there's a connection with Tish and Barack and Michelle, a direct connection. I love 6 degrees of separation. Probably. Yeah, I would imagine that they've gone to dinner or something. She's supported him or done something. I would totally believe that. Hey, this one from Cowboy Rob says, wonder what his record is out of 100 times. Wonder what his record is out of 100 times. Good question. This one from Bonnie says, and they think Trump will become a dictator? Yeah, here's a good quote from Lav Beria, head of Joseph Stalin's secret police. Famous quote, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Yeah, and there's other quotes. The Russians were brutal, man. There was another one, I think it was a Russian quote. Forget who said it. Maybe it's not. But something like, for my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law. Something like that, right? Just show them the law. You don't even have to punish them. You don't have to go and do anything crazy and illegal. All you have to do is just apply the law to them. That's what we're seeing with Trump. Knox is in the house. What's up, Knox? Defense attorney in Texas says, happy Taco Tuesday, all. Oh, gosh. Yeah, Knox, you're in Houston. I was thinking about you. Without power here in Houston again, loaded up the hotspot to catch the stream. Beryl was much like that judge. Crappy and without reason. Yeah. Yeah, Knox, I was thinking about you. I know it hit Houston. That hurricane came up there, kind of changed trajectory pretty quickly. And Hopefully you're doing well. You just lost power like 3 months ago. What was that? There was another storm, I think. Oh gosh. So hopefully you're doing well, Knox. Thanks for checking in. Hey, and glad you're safe. Kara Mills says, with all these congressional hearings, does anyone remember anything changing or anything good that comes from them? I cannot. Maybe I'm cynical. No, you're about right. A lot of what we get is news. It's just kind of entertaining, but nothing meaningful. We get a lot of letters. We get a lot of whining, a lot of moaning. I mean, I would imagine that some of it translates into political reality. Like people, I imagine there's a certain part of people that are going to be engaged that are now not, that maybe would otherwise not be engaged. People know a lot. Like I know a lot more. I feel like I'm a lot more educated. I think we oftentimes will sit back and say, we want recourse. We want indictments. We want removals. We want some stuff done. And we don't see that. So it feels like nothing's happening. But I think, Kara, it's a really slow build. It's like a generational change. I think a lot of people are waking up. And just think about the paradigm shifts that are happening all around the country as a result of Joe Biden's dementia. Huge swaths, rightfully or wrongly, call them idiots or liars, whichever camp you want to put them in. They are having epiphanies. They're waking up. And we're hopeful that matters over time. It becomes cumulative and we get a better country as a result. But I'm with you. I often tend to be cynical too. It's like, oh gosh. We see it here. Another letter. Thanks, Jim Jordan. Hey, what's up, King Ginger? The Democrats knew Trump would never end up going to jail. The trial would eventually be reversed. They just needed the convicted felon talking point. And they're using it hard, man. Every day. Convicted felon, jury of her peers. It's like all they have. And what's so wild about it is they invested a lot of time, money, manpower, energy, and media airwaves into getting that convicted felon, and it doesn't matter. Their candidate is not even competent at all. So all of that energy is like deflated. Like nobody even cares about convicted felon because Joe had a disaster at the debate. So it's all of that for nothing. It's like, wow, you guys are really bad at your jobs. Hey, John Libby, what's up? Thanks for this really nice dono. Says, since Joe has not just verbally said multiple times he is competent to run another 4 years, as well as a 2-page letter, does this give Congress any ability to overturn the special counsel results of Joe being old and frail? So this is an interesting question, John. Yeah, and there's several things that are etched into the record at this point. So we've already had, remember Claudia Tenney? She's a representative. She sent a letter a long time ago, back I think in February, to Merrick Garland about the 25th Amendment, saying, look, this guy's gone. We had the Her report that said this guy's gone. We just had this debate that says this guy's gone. So at some point, I guess you have a question is what did Kamala know? And was she being intentionally misleading in her response to the Robert Hur report? In other words, you create a wedge between them. Did she investigate that? Does she have a duty to investigate that? Was she saying things differently? Like the Kamala's emails and text messages, are they making fun of Joe? Is she saying he's incompetent, but she's basically gaslighting the country? Now, I don't think that it reverses anything. I think that Robert Hur was right. I think that Robert Hur is more right than wrong. So, and actually, in other words, it's more likely that he would be less prosecuted now based on the debate performance. If Joe Biden would have come out and had a blowout debate, just been absolutely competent and crushed it, we could have come back with the Robert Hur report and said, clearly he's incompetent. Or clearly this report was rigged, rather. Joe Biden is very competent. This report is rigged. It says he's not competent. He's very competent. He can absolutely stand trial. And so that Robert Hur report is a partisan attack, really. It's a partisan cop. He should have been prosecuted. And I think that would be something that would have more propensity to be reversed. But as it stands, I think the Robert Hur report is right. Like Joe shouldn't be prosecuted because he doesn't even know where he is. MJ Powell, what's up? Thanks for being a membo. Says, President Trump support the World Economic Forum and its goals for the world? Robert, do you know? Anybody in the House know? I think it's probably not a blanket answer either way. I mean, the World Economic Forum has a ton of policies and a ton of different goals. I would imagine that there's probably some alignment on some goals and a lot of misalignment on other goals. I don't think that Trump is a WEF shill, but I think that there are some things that they probably have agreement on. I don't know what those would be. But there's probably a lot of things that he is absolutely against, that the WF is absolutely for. And the things that I think, like, I'm not an expert on all the WF policies, but I think some things might be about like electric vehicles and stuff like that, right? That Trump has opposed. So anyways, good question. This comment from Teresa says, Trump was slowly getting away from all the three-letter agencies, including WF, WHO, and so on. Yeah, in some instances, and in other instances, he supports them. He's like, he's going to build the FBI a new building. NY on Locals says, the welfare benefits is the way Trump gets them to self-deport back home. Take away those benefits. It's 10 to 20x more than illegals earn in their home country if they self-deport. In addition, shut down the Western Union transfers of money, which sends billions back to, repatriates billions. If they are so persecuted, they shouldn't be sending aid back to the country that abused them. Biology Always Wins says, illegals and COVID, both unaccountable, and the death count for COVID, both unaccountable, sounds about right. Just like 81 million votes to Joe was laudable. How can we get the votes verified before 2035? Charles G. on YouTube says, now that the Bidens has put executive orders in place per the originally failed border bill, they should say we will now pass that bill with this as an amendment. Pass that bill with this as an amendment. Oh, I see. So put the SAVE Act into the failed Biden border bill and say, okay, we will give you all of this border stuff, but you gotta put these votes in. That's an interesting tactic there, Charles. So it's kind of like a poison pill. Okay, you really want this border? We really want election security, so give it to us. Then, of course, they would delay implementation until after 2024. They'd rig it anyways. Hey, what's up? Eddie V says, did you know Chip Roy's from Texas, Rob? Have you heard of Texas, Rob? It's paradise on earth, unlike Arkansas or Alabama or wherever you live, Rob. Close. You got the other two A's. We're the third one. Remember, Goliad. Remember the Alamo, and God bless Texas. From Eddie in Texas. What's up, Eddie? Thanks for that one. Here, rub some dirt on it. Says Dems won't have a problem explaining this to their constituents because mathematically their votes are enhanced, not diluted. Their votes are enhanced, not diluted. Oh, I see. They're getting like a twofer. You're saying they get like 2-for-1 votes because they're diluting. I mean, maybe for this election, but ultimately, if they're voting in everything, right, it actually is diluting your share of representation. But they're suicidal, many of them, in that party. I mean that metaphorically. What's up, Eddie? Thank you for that one. A Bad Poet. We have a 1-year anniversary in the house. Thanks for being a memo for 1 full year. A Bad Poet says people who failed their country and fled their country don't vote here. From A Bad Poet. Philip C says, even with Biden's condition, if I were in Congress, it would be hard for me to vote to remove him via the 25th. POTUS better be in a coma but before I'd be okay with removing them by such undemocratic means. I'm with you on that, Philip. Yeah, I'm not really in favor of that. That feels very anti-democratic, which is why when Pelosi was doing it, it's like, come on, are you really, you're going to create a body and you're going to make the president beholden to some amorphous body? It feels like a big separation of powers problem. And I think that would be unconstitutional if they did that. It'd be an amendment. They'd have to amend it. But for example, if Congress created a body, I don't know that would be constitutional. Honestly, like the amendment says they can do it, but then that body, they would exercise power in a way that's really precarious. It's concerning, but I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they should have removed Joe. Let's see what he can do. Hey, Samantha R. Been a member for 15 months. Thanks for being a membo. Almost 2 full babies in the house. Great to have you, Samantha. Thanks for joining us. Stop the fraud, China hustle. Says Tara Reade back in the spotlight with a new lawsuit against the liar Joe Biden, who did the hibbity-jibbity with Tara Reade. Lots of evidence. See change.org justice for Tara's stuff. Thank you. Stop the China fraud hustle. Bag of Bolts is here. Says, I agree that Joe Biden has an unprecedented record. From Bag of Bolts. Thank you, Bag of Bolts. Ike's Girl says, does the First Lady qualify for top secret and higher info? I don't know. Good. I would think the answer ordinarily would be no. But we know Dr. Jill's a doctor, so maybe that's different. Justice here says, did you see what is going on? A new group called Democracy Defense Project to restore voter confidence. It's probably like more to silence whistleblowers. Please look into it. Democracy Defense Project. Hey, Nevada Legion. Very nice dono over on the Rumbles. Thank you, Nevada Legion, for sending this one. And thanks for watching on Rumble. Says, no longer do I blame just Dems. The Uniparty will just break more election laws, and so-called judges will rule no standing in the upcoming election. Yeah, I think you're right about that, Nevada. And I feel like we're actually seeing less election litigation this year than we saw in 2020 from many of the Republicans. In 2020, there were all these COVID rules, and Democrats were filing lawsuits all over the place. But Trump, remember, even when he was responding and making claims of problems, so we covered tons of election litigation in 2020. And when Trump was filing stuff and making claims that there would be problems before the election happened, they said that his claims were not ripe. They had not happened yet. They needed to ripen, just like a piece of fruit. And said, sorry, your claims are just, we don't even know if you claim this is going to happen in the election, and you can't make that claim because it hasn't happened yet. Okay, so he loses. Then the problems happen. Then he files after the fact. They say no standing. So you're right. Like, if they want to rig it, they're going to rig it. The answer is it's got to be too big to rig. So you have overwhelming numbers. So just the sheer volume is enough to rebut that. But it's also a credibility thing, right? It's about credibility and legitimacy. And they've been faking like they have credibility and legitimacy for a long time. But Joe Biden's incompetence, right? Every time they try to double down on their security, people realize it's fake. So for example, the other thing I've been noticing a lot is they have to create a new January 6th. So they're now, you've seen this, they're now targeting Project 2025, whatever that is. Trump has disavowed it. Nothing to do with it, but Biden's talking about it. Jen Psaki's talking about it. They can't stop talking about it because they need something else. Their J6 propaganda has failed. So they have to change the story. So they just manufacture something else new that people should be freaked about, and they scare their audiences to death over it. So, but you're right. The Uniparty's the Uniparty, but this time I feel like a lot more Republicans are on board with this campaign. Stop the China fraud hustle. Says, Rob, can you open change.org justice for Tara? No, we can't do that right now, but thanks for the dono. Jay Dizzle says, did you know if the ATF and the DOJ will get punished over the Little Rock Airport CEO assassination? No, I don't even know about this story. Did they assassinate some CEO? The ATF did? No, I'm not familiar with that story, Jay Dizzle. Sounds like a spicy one, but doesn't surprise me. Hey, Justice here. So if the ATF and the DOJ assassinated someone, will they get punished? Probably not, without even knowing the story. Hey, Justice here. Says, well, hey, welcome aboard. Just became a new supporter. Grab the morning show, Just. Thanks for joining. Charles G says, Iron. Congressman Goldman did the Cohen prep for the Trump trial and bragged about it at the hearing today, complaining about Republicans somehow being the ones weaponizing the government. Yeah, Goldman has been manufacturing fake hoaxes about Trump. That's been his entire plan in Congress. This one from Stop the China Fraud says, please sign Justice for Tara petition on change.org. Judge Mental, been a membo for 2 months, says it wasn't a deja vu, Rob. I have been here before. Yeah, you saw me pause on your name like, very familiar here. Hey, Nevada Legion says, Rob, because you are honest, you could never be in politics in today's theater. So take this dono and use it, as I know you will. Thank you, Nevada. We will. And we're working. We got some cool stuff cooking in the background. I'm finally realizing I need some help, so I'm trying to figure that out. And I've got some good stuff in motion. So I really do appreciate it. And it's going to be great. I got so many plans in place and figuring out some structure and some framework to help me get it done. So I appreciate that, Nevada Legion. And I do appreciate that. I think I would have a hard time in politics. I really don't want to lie to people. And I guess my positions would be pretty simple. So I'd be telling a lot of people no all the time. And I don't know that would be a lot of fun. So it's like, no, we're not voting for that. Are you nuts? No, obviously not. Like, what? Well, well, we're not voting for that. Well, you're my congressman. I need you to do, well, I'm sorry. The government shouldn't be doing that for you. You should figure that out on your own. I don't know what to tell you. So I don't know that I'd be very successful, but anyways. Jeffrey Adams, what's up? Jeffrey A. says former Maricopa County election worker was indicted on felony counts in several cases. Yeah, that guy who stole that key card, I think it was. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that one. We're going to keep our eye on that one here in Arizona. Hey, Sheila the Pooh. Oh, I get it. Sheila the Pooh. Is that how we say it? Sheila? Is it Sheila? Do I say it like that? Pooh? Is that how we say it? I was saying Pug. I don't know how to say it. So, Sheila, you're going to have to correct us. How do we properly say your name? Either way, I love this. This is beautiful. A million hugs to Sheila P. Hey, this one from Sheila P. Bringing in 10 new membos. And thanks for creating that one. Adventure Camping Zone's coming in. What's up, Kevin H.? Raymond Longo, Kenneth W.'s in the house. Kay Christensen, Bam Bam's coming in. Emil's in the house. We got John Q. Smith, Kevin A. Dagny Taggart's here. We got many others, Tony Hay and others shouting out Sheila Pugh or Pooh or Puh in the house. We're going to figure that out and not forget it. What's up, Charles G. in the house as well. Says, funny thing, also at the weaponization hearing, all the Democrats were stating as fact that Trump's platform was Project 2025. Exactly. They have to it's coming out of nowhere. Where the hell did this come from? They have to just make it up because their January 6th propaganda is all failing. So they're like, oh man, everybody already forgot about that. So let's manufacture something new. It's called AstroTurf. It's not real. Jay Dizzle says Milwaukee Clinton Airport CEO. It's a horrible injustice. Wow. Is this new? Is this a new story or is this an old Clinton story? Interesting, Jay Dizzle. All right. Thanks for the heads up on that. And Sheila P. in the house says new watcher grandbaby is home. Thank you for your prayers, my friends, for our friend Sheila P. Sheila, congrats and welcome home. New grandbaby in the house and our newest watcher grandbaby joining the show. Thanks, Sheila, for always being so supportive and for sharing the love of your newest addition with everyone here. It's just great. So thanks for that, Sheila. Really awesome. Thanks for sending that one in, Sheila. And my friends, thank you for those awesome donos. Let's say hello to our friends on the X platform. Before we wrap it up, Trump has still not come out to speak yet, and we're wondering where the president is. Hey, what's up, James Pepper? Right to Think is over there with some interesting memes. We have WECU News talking about election integrity, sharing another link. Right to Think is posting some Joe Biden memes, which are very interesting. And I think that's Joe Biden's head on a monkey. I don't know what's going on that one. But Danny McWilliams says, 25th Amendment, do you really want Kamala Harris as president? I know, it's a concerning thing. And so the answer is really no. So, all right, here's this one. Justice for Terra, change.org, just doubled in 5 minutes. That's tremendous news. So everybody's going to support that. Justice for Terra, which we support. And because anybody who's been victimized by the Biden crime family should seek justice. No one's above the law. And yes, I know the rule. If you say that unironically, seriously, you have to just deduct 25 points or 20 points. Did I make it go up? Maybe it should be 25. I don't know. But okay, my friends, thank you for all of those very, very nice donos, all of your amazing support. is very, very appreciated. And so we are saying thank you, and we're heading over to locals right now to debrief and hang out for a bit at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you're a member who joined us, we'll be back tomorrow morning. So we'll see you on the members only morning stream. We'd love to have you become a member on YouTube or on Locals, and you can find the links in the description below to join up. We also have our website, robertgovea.com, and the lodge, watcherlodge.com, and our sponsors of the show today, twc.health/Robert. Links down in the description below. Good to get prepared. Before we wrap it up on the day, we want to thank our amazing mods and our meme smiths who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly around here. Our friends, K Bean in the house, Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zach Nichols, Janek, Dog Digger, Economy Pilot, Donut Mind Me, Carrie B, and our friend Zulu in the house. We've also got our meme smiths, Sleepy Dog Lee, Nathan N810, Gigam Gigam, Glocky McGlock in the house, and our Doc Master Elliot, all making this place nice and beautified. But my friends, it looks like Trump might be making his way to the scene there in Miami. And so head on over to Right Side Broadcasting to partake in the fun. You can see here is what the scene looks like over there. It looks like the president is on the way over there. So head on over to Right Side Broadcasting. It looks like a presidential motorcade in golf carts. Might be happening right now, which is pretty dang cool. So head on over there to Right Side Broadcasting, and we'll be back here tomorrow to get into it again. And in order to do that, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.